Alright guys, welcome back to another video, and today I'm doing a trade breakdown on a continuation short that I took. I'm going to go over, my pre-market analysis that I did, went over my thesis. I'll go over that, why I took this trade and the entry triggers with it, and why I took this loss and why I retook the entry, and I took the trade on my fund of future account, as you can see here. Made 870 on the day with two trades. This is pretty close to payout, to be honest. I need to say another thing as well, guys, is that um I want to be honest, right? For the past 2 weeks and a half, I've been break even slash losing, but like in negative variance, right? But I've been able to, upcharge my accounts and my other funded accounts, and this is the only account where I am like truly in profit. I would say the rest of my accounts, I'm only up about 1K in terms of my funded accounts. So please note that, online, right? I could show you like all the winning trades, but I want to be honest with you guys, and that not everyone's winning every single trade. No one's having like, clean streaks. People have seen me watch like where I've traded live right in front of them in my mentorship, and they've seen me, being on these losing streaks, me being on a 4 week winning streak, and me, getting my 18K payout last month. And same thing today, right? Like same thing with the past 2 weeks where I've been break even slash losing, right? But obviously this account I'm up, and I want to show this trade just because of how clean it was. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys can learn from it. Now I'll show you a clip of where I entered on the trade live, and then I'll go through it with you guys. Alright, you guys just watched me enter that trade, and now I'm going to explain high time frame why I actually did enter this trade. Let me just make sure this is minute based. Is alright. So I'm on the 5 minute, right? I'm noticing that we've obviously dumped off, and then we've continued going down. Value obviously shifting lower and lower, and we can see here that we are balancing, right? Price has finally found balance, and now we obviously have displaced these lows in, and we've had this mine high volume node in where we've used our support to push back up. It's not that clean, to be honest. I would have liked to use this one right here, this like bump of volume, where we've used our support previously many times before. And I could see here where if you guys see my drawing tool, we've used this area as resistance and we pushed lower. Same thing here. And in terms of delta, there was a bunch of negative delta that was just stacking and stacking. If I were to show you the deep DOM, the heat map, previously when I was testing it out, I could see there was a bunch of sellers pinning here. And you could see right here, we have a really clean area of a minor high volume node, which is right here, which is what I used to understand that this is where I want sellers to be in. I want to be more lenient on sellers. I want buyers to be absorbed, exhausted, etc. And I understood that we should go lower. And this is a really good area for us to come back into balance. Obviously, I considered this a failed auction at the top here, and then we went lower. And in terms of AMT, right, you have to understand first of all, like imagine we can't see what happened there. So you have to understand what cycle is priced in. Well, we're obviously balancing, meaning that we're going to obviously bounce this area and come back in, and we're going to bounce off this area and go back up, right? And we're obviously using POC as the area of fair value. So we have an established balance as the current balance. And now you want to understand, right? If price comes to this area, what would you want? You'd obviously want shorts unless we close above with extreme buying pressure. Then we'd get the retest and try to get the longs back up to view up. This line is view up, by the way, based off the yearly composite. Or for example, if we didn't go up there, we'd want to get longs right back up. And obviously these areas here are failed auctions, like I've stated before, and also here are failed auctions, these wicks, right? We haven't truly closed above it. Like for example, here we closed above it right here, and you could have get the longs right there. That would have been like, you know, lower time frame on a 40 range or 1 minute chart. That would have been about 3-4 R move right there. Then we went back down, right? And I could see that sellers are definitely strong. There's going to be a bunch of sell pressure just going to come in, right? Because we've used this area as resistance previously. And here is where I take profit just based off this transition of where the actual established value comes in, right? But you could have obviously taken profit at POC. But for me personally, I would just wanted to, you know, take this trade just because of consistency rules and things like that, right? And for the past like week and like past week or 2 weeks, we've been in mostly gamma long environments. So I understood that we might just chop, we might not have that, you know, move where we go all the way down, which we did obviously, but in most of the days, that's not what you're going to get. And yeah, I mean, for the past day or so, or 2 days, we've been in a negative gamma environment. That's why we dropped off probably and dumped, and then we came to this previous balance. So now, in terms of what I'm thinking, is that price might just come back up, come back to view up. If I were to try to get longs here, once we break out and we utilize this area for longs, right? Because buyers will be strong and we'll push higher, and we should rebalance this external range of where we're going down from in terms of the auction, right? But in terms of the yearly composite, we can see that here we had an area of low participation. And what did price do? We fully sliced through it and we used it as an area to just completely dump. And that is what happened with sellers showing their hands. And we fully dumped here. And now we're at an area of the yearly composite, on the yearly composite, where we have a balance. And you can see here, again, we have an area of low participation. And you have to understand in terms of higher time frame, like, you know, yearly composite, low volume nodes, price loves to either stall there and try to create balance there, or just slice through them instantly if there's enough selling pressure. And we can see in terms of the delta there was, and here you can see that we just touched a previous POC or balance right there, and we use that as resistance again to push it back down lower, slicing through that low volume node like we have done previously, right? So in terms of higher time frame, that is why I entered. And then in terms of lower time frame, as you can see here, the reason why I lost this trade when I entered here shorts, I thought that these buyers here who previously obviously had control pushed up higher. I thought this would be a refill zone for sellers to come back in passively, and you know, we could go all the way lower and use this as a drive to come back down here. But then obviously I got stopped out because buyers came back in and I got stopped, which is fine, right? But then we came back to an area where we had obviously sell pressure, and it was obviously a bunch of sell pressure because look, it's a refill zone again. I love using refill zones, as you guys know from my entries. So you can see here that we had sellers who obviously had control, we went lower. We had sellers again. When we came back up to it, we had control again, lower. Sellers who had previous control, lower again. So that is it. Obviously here buyers had control and we pushed up higher, and then we refilled it to sellers multiple times for the resistance lower. That is why I entered on this trade and expected sell side resistance. And also here again another refill zone that was coupled here, and then we went lower. If we actually look at the dealing ranges for this trade, you can see here, right? If we looked at the actual volume actually on this chart, because I like to obviously show you guys the, like, I use dealing ranges, right, in terms of its leg. We could see here the previous dealing range. If I just draw out that VP, you could see here this area of where we had resistance anyways for the refill zone. this is on the 1 minute by the way, it was in line with POC. So it was also aligned, high time frame technically in terms of intraday alignments with 40 range. On the 1 minute, we had POC alignment with the refill zone. Just looking at that right now, I don't actually use this. I'm just saying that this would have been really clean trade. This was why it was a really clean trade anyways for the shorts. And also, again, a balance. It was just a balanced rejection. We, came out of balance. We went up to it, we used it as resistance, and we pushed all the way down, used it as a failed auction. Sellers came in, and obviously buyers are being absorbed, and we pushed all the way back down. And I could have taken that trade all the way down, right? But yeah, that is pretty much the reason why I took this trade. If you guys have any questions, you can obviously ask me in the comments or DM me on Discord. But this is probably the reason why this was a really good trade. Another trade that was actually really good was retaking the shorts again at origin of the move. So if I were to just delete everything on my chart, you could see right here, you can see right here, this would have been the best origin of the move setup, which is what I've taught you guys in terms of a scalping model in these type of scenarios where you want to catch the continuation of the move. So you can see here, sellers are willing to price lower, right? You can see here, sellers come in, showing initiative that we should go lower. Obviously, this would be a high risk entry for of the origin of the move entry, but sellers showed their hands and we went lower, right? And once we went lower from there, that's when I entered. But obviously, before that, right, when we went lower and lower, you could see a bunch of sellers are willing to price lower. So now you know that, right? Now we know previously this were failed for the origin of the move because we didn't get that squeeze lower. So price came back up. We came to a refill zone where sellers obviously had control, and we basically top ticked that and we went lower. And then once we went lower and sellers continuously showed their hands with even more sell aggression right here after obviously, they failed previously in terms of the squeeze. Now, sellers are definitely in control, right? And we're coming back to like intraday daily value, right? And price came back up with buys hitting the wall, they got absorbed, and you could have entered right there with your stop right there, and this would have been another really good re-entry trade, and you could have targeted back down to where sellers previously had no control, and that would have been a really clean 8-hour trade. But obviously you're probably not going to take that. You could probably just target POC of the current intraday value or even higher time frame. That would have been a better target. But that's what I would say for the second best trade of the day in terms of origin of the move. This was a really clean trade. Again, another origin of the move setup as we're going lower. You can see here, sellers are willing to price lower. What happens right there? You can see we go lower with a bunch of aggressiveness. This is actually a squeeze, not really origin of the move, to be honest, because we didn't fail, right? So with a bunch of sellers willing to price lower, we probably move really fast, and then buyers obviously being absorbed right here. Once buyers get absorbed, you could have just entered there because the opposition's obviously failing, your side's winning. You could have entered right there with your stop just there, and again you could have took the trade again. This is how you frame continuations with higher time frame thesis, obviously, because if you want short bias, why would you be taking these trades? So that's how you filter it out also in terms of continuation trades, but that is how you catch 930 continuation trades, for example, with order flow, with in terms of squeezes, with in terms of origin of the move, or with the model I teach in my mentorship where you could have entered way earlier. But I would say that is it, guys. If you have any questions, you can obviously DM me, and there's a PDF below where I fully explain why I entered on this trade, like just a bit more in depth. It's a good free resource. And yeah, if you guys obviously have questions, you can DM me again.